Huge game this weekend. Can't wait to watch it. Ohio State and Michigan. I mean, and Rob, it's always a big game, right? Always a huge game. But this year, man, both teams undefeated. Ohio State ranked number 2, Michigan ranked number 3. And whoever loses is going to likely, almost certainly, be out of the college football playoff as far as the top 4 that qualify. So this is all the marbles. And it was an interesting story written in Sports Illustrated by Michael Rosenberg.
Well, of course I know.
For them.
Yep.
Yeah, he worked in Detroit. Right? Yep.
At the Free Press. I know Mike very well.
And he wrote, Rob, that the 12-team expansion, which will kick in as soon as 2024, when that happens, it'll be a bad thing because this game between Ohio State and Michigan, for instance, which Saturday means everything, right? I mean, in addition to the great rivalry, in addition to the Big Ten title, which, you know, teams have conference championship games too, but in addition to the Big Ten title, and it also, of course, has going to the college football playoff on the line. Of course, once that expands to 12 teams, in a situation like this, both of the teams would still know that they're likely to make the playoff or going to make the playoff. So it takes a little bit away from the game, and he thinks it would take a ton away from the game, and that's one reason he doesn't want to see, or he's not happy about the 12-team playoff. Where are you at on this? I know you didn't really like it.
I totally agree with him because if this new format was in place, Chris, this game wouldn't matter. They would both be going no matter what. And that's not what you don't want to have. I think Mike is spot on this, that as time goes on and so many teams getting involved, it will take away from these kind of matchups where, you know, one team has a chance to advance and the other team is out. And so they could play this game and not even care about it or rest people and like, well, we're going to make it anyway. Like, we're going to be in the playoff. Why should we waste our better players or put our guys out there in a game that doesn't matter? Can you imagine? I think that's whenever you open up a playoff where too many people, you know what? We've seen it in the NBA. Now with the play-in and whatnot, it's not about, Chris, it's not about getting the top seed anymore. It's just about, okay, let's get to the playoffs. We want to get in. We'll take some days off. It's okay. You know, the other night, the other night, the Warriors rested like 4 starters and all that. You know, like those are the kind of things you start to look at and go, because they know that it doesn't matter. It's about getting in the playoffs and being healthy. And that could happen in college football. And that's the part that is disappointing if it does happen.
I completely disagree. I mean, you know this, right? You worked in Michigan. You think there's going to be a day Ohio State, Michigan doesn't matter? That game is always going to matter. It is a rivalry of the highest order, regardless of whether or not it's for that. Obviously, it means more if it's for the national championship or a right to play for the national championship. But this game will always mean something. Coaches have been fired with great records because they couldn't beat the rival next door. And so this game will always matter. And now I agree, it's just undeniable that the regular season will be a bit watered down. A bit. It'll still be great. It'll still be exciting, and college football is full of great rivalries. We got Alabama-Auburn coming up. Obviously, like you're going to have tons of rivalries in the SEC and these other great conferences. That's not going away. It just won't be sudden death. It won't be do or die. It won't be if you lose, your season's over. Still will be a big deal, And here's what I say, Rob, because you and I have talked about it before. When we grew up and it was a mythical national champion, right? They didn't have a championship game. They had about 6 major bowls, 6 or 7 major bowls played on New Year's Day. And you would watch all of them, and the top teams would be in all of them. And it would literally be like, how bad did you beat the other team by? That could make you the national champion. Like, it was just, you're going to watch it, and whoever wins most impressively as far as beating a high-ranking team could move up big time in the polls. And now, Rob, let's face it, none of these bowl games matter. The only postseason college football games that matter are the playoff games, the Final Four, and then the championship. Period. I don't care about any of the other ones. And I don't think most people, obviously you got some college football guys that just watch everything, but most fans only look at the championship. And so what I'm saying is expanding to 12 teams. Now, all of those games are going to matter. That first round playoff game with the top 12 teams, those 6 games or however they do it, but if it's 6 or if it's 4, because teams get buys, whatever, it's going to matter. And then the next round is going to matter. And then, you get to all the way through the championship. I think it's going to be great. It's going to be a playoff.
I totally disagree with you because when they have 4 teams now, most of the games are blowouts. They're not even competitive.
They haven't
been competitive.
Some years, but some years they've been very competitive.
Who did Michigan play last year?
Alabama's 7th in the country this year. Clemson's 9th.
Michigan last year, Chris, they didn't even belong on the field. I can't remember, Rob G, who they play.
That's not so what are we supposed to do?
No, but we've seen plenty of lopsided games with 4 teams. Now you're going to put 12 teams and maybe another 8 that really don't belong there? It doesn't mean that because
Alabama's number 7.
It doesn't mean
they would give a team a good game. Tennessee's number 10. They were number 1 a few weeks ago. You don't know. TCU, who would ever think they're number 4? No, but I'm
talking about from what we've seen from 4
So you think there's only 2 good teams in the country?
Well, all I know is from what we've seen in the past, in the 4 teams, there have been a lot of lopsided and blowouts, and that's all I'm worried about is that those games won't matter. And maybe, Chris, you might be right. Maybe they are exciting. But if they're what we've got a sample of and they're bad, it's going to be interesting to see how people feel about them and whether or not people are like, oh, well, I'll wait till the Final Four because they're not. This is not that good or not that compelling because they let a number 12 team that really doesn't belong in the college playoff and they got rolled by 40. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, look, I think that'll happen sometimes. But then there'll be times when there are close games. Then there'll be times where there's upsets. That's just the state of college football. And no matter what, you run that risk. Maybe they somehow it's got to get more balanced out. Maybe NIL does that, whatever. But I'm just saying, that risk is always there. All I know is this, Rob. The bowl games, to me, are the bowl games relevant other than the Final Four? Really?
No, because they made them irrelevant with the college football playoff. So they made them.
Right.
So they're going to
but
make.
Now we're going to make a few more relevant games.
No,
now.
But I'm talking about the Michigan Ohio State. You say, well, it'll always be relevant, always matter. Not if Jim Harbaugh decided I'm going to make it anyway. I'm not going to start my quarterback, or I'm not going to start some of my top players.
I don't see that.
And I don't care if we win or not because I'm trying to win a national championship. Beating
you still
Ohio
have to
State,
finish in the top 12.
Beating Ohio State doesn't matter. They're still going to. I'm saying if they're 2-3, they're going to make it whether they lose that game or not. When you got 12 teams coming in,
we don't see that in the NFL for the most part. Teams play every weekend. The NBA, you brought that up. The NBA, the playoffs aren't what did that. It was the load management that individuals, coaches, Popovich, and individual players started to do.
Yeah, but I'm talking
that's
about
what ruined. That's what
but
brought
I'm talking
that
about with
in.
the
It wasn't
play, and now
playoffs.
20 of the 30 teams make it. I'm just saying it took off some of the steam.
Is baseball worse than when it just had the pennant? When it's the winner of the American League versus the winner of the National League.
I get that. I get that it evolves, but you don't want to make it where people feel like the regular season doesn't matter. And you could do that in college football if you get to the final 2 games and you say to yourself, "We're in." Even if we lose our last 2, we're in. It doesn't matter. Or we play at the final game of the year, and you don't want to jeopardize trying. You saying, "I want to win a championship." I don't think anybody would be mad at Jim Harbaugh if he protected his players in a meaningless game and said, "It's okay, we'll just play, and if we it's about getting into the tournament." That's what and that could happen. That's all.
Well, what that would do is postpone a big game. There would still be big games down the line. I don't think that'll happen. I don't want that to happen, obviously. But I think all that would do is say, okay, the big game isn't Ohio State, Michigan this week. In 2 weeks, it's Michigan, Penn State in the first round of the playoff. That would be a huge game. So you still would get big games. And like I said, in baseball, I mean, Rob, they've really expanded the baseball player. Do you not like it?
No,
I mean, that's a prime example. And that regular season, because they play so many games, that more than any other regular season is like, man, do I really need to watch this game on Tuesday night in July? Like, but it still is what it is. The playoffs are great.
I don't like it from the college football standpoint because the history so far, Chris, it might turn around, it might change, but the history of the college football playoffs are a lot of lopsided games. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know Rob G. We've looked at it.
There have been some close ones. There have been more blowouts. I agree.
All I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
But that's just, I mean, that's not a format issue.
That's
a fact that 1 or 2 teams have been dominant.
Hold on a second, because I know Rob G looked it up because we had some information.
Yeah,
I mean, I know we did it. We talked about it before.
16 games in the playoffs so far. Only 3 of them have been decided by less than 10 points. Average margin of victory across the 16 games is 19.8 points per game.
Right, but again, that's not a format issue. That's a college football issue regardless of the format. You've had a couple of dominant teams. So even if you still have a couple of dominant teams, you're still going to have some good competitive games by those 12 teams that are in the playoff. It might not be the 2 best teams, but some of those games will be competitive and they'll be meaningful.